Hey, everybody. Ken and Brandon back for the Overlay Podcast, episode number 5. We finally got our episode numbers right and the name of the podcast correct. It only took us 4 episodes.
Yeah, so the Overlay is officially the name.
That's
the
it.
Overlay Podcast. And we got our Twitter handle up.
We got a Twitter handle. It's at the Overlay_pod.
The Overlay_pod.
Correct, yeah.
Seems great.
As in the Overlay Podcast.
Right.
Pod for short.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, picking up what you're putting down. All right, so episode 5, we're going to talk about Pot Limit Omaha and what did you say? You had a pretty good title. I feel like we're screwing up.
Oh, it's like just No Limit Hold'em versus Pot Limit Omaha.
Oh, yeah, that seems better. No Limit Hold'em versus Pot Limit Omaha, how the poker world is transitioning into multiple card games?
Yes.
All right.
Kind of shying away from No Limit in the past 10 years. 5 years, really.
And again, why do you think people are trying to venture out of No Limit Hold'em? Because in all honesty, No Limit Texas Hold'em is what put poker back on the map.
It did. I mean, it went from the Limit Hold'em games to No Limit Hold'em. But now I think, in my opinion, I just think that people are too good. It's like kind of like solved.
Well, it's funny because in episode 4 with Jamin, we actually talked about this. We talked about how. Have you listened to that one yet?
I haven't.
So
I've been really busy.
Yeah, you're really busy sitting at home, not leaving the house.
Right.
Because we're still in COVID 2020, COVID-19 2020.
We're in the middle of it.
We're right in the middle of it.
We're at the eye of the storm right now.
We're literally, hopefully, we're at the top of the timeline here. We should be on the downside now. This is 3 weeks in. We got 3 more weeks to go. When you say it that way, when you say you've got 3 more weeks to go, it kind of seems like a daunting task, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think actually it's more daunting that you say, oh, we've done 3 weeks and now we have to do that again.
We're at the halfway point.
Yeah, that seems...
I imagine this is what running a marathon is like.
I can tell you, I ran a marathon last year.
You actually ran a marathon last year?
No.
Okay.
No. But yeah, I can imagine hitting mile 13 and being like, man, we're halfway done.
If I'd only signed up for a half marathon, I'd be done.
Right.
But I didn't. We signed up for a full marathon. So anyways, back to No Limit Hold'em versus Pot Limit Omaha, PLO versus NLH. I did talk to Jamin about this, how people... I find it weird when people say that they think No Limit Hold'em is solved. I think people are better at the game, and I think some of the things that worked, 10, 12 years ago certainly doesn't work again. I mean, I don't think the term 4-bet even existed when Moneymaker won the main event, correct?
No, yeah.
It existed, but nobody called it a 4-bet. They're like, oh, you should be 4-betting more. So,
and they only had aces and kings when they did it.
Yeah, it was funny. I saw something on Twitter that they did an actual a poll that said, have you ever 4-bet anything else other than aces? And your response is maybe kings.
Right. I mean, you're supposed to be. I mean, we can go into theory. You're supposed to have like ace-4 suiteds and ace-3 suiteds and stuff like that
to balance out your range.
But I mean, who does that? I mean, I don't.
So your belief of why Pot Limit Omaha is becoming a more popular game, certainly not as popular as No Limit, but gaining more ground, getting to be, a game that more players want to play, because of the fact that No Limit Hold'em is a very difficult game to play now because the better players now are so good at it, and it's tougher to win money at?
Yeah, I think it's more like I was trying to come up with comparisons. It's kind of like, I guess, like maybe like checkers versus chess, where like you can be super good at checkers, but then like if you're facing another super good opponent, like it just kind of comes down to luck, or like a lot of like 1 or 2 moves in the whole entire game, because like everybody knows how to start a game of checkers if you're good at checkers. Like it's a solved game, so like everybody knows their ranges, which is the same thing as, like everybody knows where they're going to start in checkers, just like everybody knows what hands they're going to raise with and hold them, and everybody knows what they're going to bet with on the flop and their ranges and like stuff like that. Where chess and PLO, it kind of opens up like a whole new. You got pieces that move side to side, up and down, left and right. You got all different kinds of variables in the game.
Well, it's a different game. I mean, even though it's the same board, let's continue with this analogy because I like it. I think it's maybe a bit extreme, but I get what you're trying to say is that checkers is, it's an easier game to grasp and catch a hold of right away and to get pretty good at pretty quickly. Whereas in Pot Limit Omaha, there is a lot more pieces in the sense of what they do, how they do it, the moves that go together. I mean, it's the old adage, right? I mean, we ain't playing checkers, we're playing chess here. And Pot Limit Omaha is a much different game. There are many, many more levels of thinking involved, of different plays that people are doing. I find so many times that I'm like, I can't be good here. I fold. And then as it turns out, I see the hands that get played out, and I'm like, man, I definitely put that guy on something way different than what he had. And, my hand would have been good, but that's kind of poker in general. But
there's just so much more. There's it's hard to say this, but there's way more information that but way more information you don't know. Like in Hold'em, you only know the board and your 2 cards. And of course you can use the information of blockers a little bit and the people's betting patterns a little bit and stuff like that. And so you have to come up to answer the question of, are you good or not with this limited piece of information of your 2 cards and the 5 cards on the board and what they are representing. In Omaha, you have 4 cards. There's 40 cards dealt out 36 cards dealt out face down. Now, everything just kind of gets scrambled up in a crazy way where it's really tough to figure out what the person's doing.
It's hard to put somebody on a range
because there's so many different combinations.
Correct, and it's a bunch. And then the other thing that I always find, and maybe it makes me a better player or a worse player, I don't really know, but it certainly defines who I am. I find that I always seem to be able to put players on hands. People make hands a lot more often in Pot Limit Omaha than they do in No Limit for that exact reason that you just said, right? So many more cards are out there that if, 4-6 makes a straight and there's 3 guys in the hand and you can tell by the betting, one of them's probably got that straight, and one of them probably has a flush draw because there's 2 diamonds out there, which means my naked aces are probably not good unless I have a redraw. I think what new players have difficult with is the concept of redraws because redraws don't really exist in No Limit Hold'em, correct?
Right. I mean, if you have the nuts straight, you don't need to worry about oh man, I have the nuts straight and a flush draw and Hold'em. You have the nuts straight, I don't care. You're in there.
Right.
If you got Jack 10 on Queen 9-8, I don't give a damn if I have a hard draw with it or not. I'm trying to get it in against Queen 9 or Ace Queen or one pair, and they're pretty much drawing dead, and that's the end of the story.
Right.
In Omaha, you got Queen 9-8, and there's 2 hearts out there, and you got naked Jack 10, and it's pot, 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 pot. Well, now it's maybe somebody has Jack 10 with a flush draw, maybe some guy has a set, and maybe I'm getting 3-rolled here, and you can essentially put it in with the nuts and only be able to get half the pot.
And you're risking, all of that money in the sense that you cannot improve. So the whole idea of redraws is that if you don't have a redraw on Pot Limit Omaha, even though you flop the nuts with 2 cards to come with multiple players in the hand, you could conceivably think about folding.
Right.
Have you ever folded the nuts on the flop?
Oh, yeah. Plenty of times.
Because of the fact that you don't have any redraws. And I think this is stuff that players get used to when they start switching from No Limit to Omaha. Because I think that's the natural progression. I just feel like there's more action in the game. You get more fish in Pot Limit Omaha because you get the guy who's going to jam in all of his money with Jack 10 on a 7-8-9 flop where, I've got Jack 10 and 2 hearts and 8s.
A queen.
Right. So it's I didn't even think about the higher redraw on the straight. So, I mean, it's I'm free rolling all of that action where you cannot improve. Worst case scenario, I break even. Best case scenario, I get all of your money. And I think that's something in Omaha that players mix up a lot is the redraws. And I also think that new players in Pot Limit Omaha significantly overplay their big overcards, right? Or their over pairs, I should say.
Yeah. For sure. Aces and kings aren't anywhere near what they are in Hold'em.
Well, it's not only do I want aces, I want something to go with them, right? Because if you got
Suited,
aces,
connected.
7 deuce, I've actually folded pre-flop to
For sure.
a 3-way action where I'm facing a 4-bet and I'm looking down at 2 red aces and a 7 of spades and a deuce of, clubs, thinking, well, I'm in trouble.
Right. And it's tough to play. Really, you have to flop an ace, and if there's all this action, somebody's probably got an ace, and every flop seems bad.
Yeah, there are no good flops for that.
Right. Even if it comes 10-8-3 rainbow.
Right.
You're like, oh man, what can they have? Well, they can have unlimited amount of things.
Correct.
Like even if they just have, what did I say, 10-8-3? Even if they just got 9-8-7 for a pair of eights and an open ender, like you're probably behind with aces.
Or you're a coin flip, in which case do you really want to get involved?
Right, and that's kind of a bad hand for them to have there. They could have all kinds of good stuff.
So just the folks at home know, typically you play exclusively Pot Limit Omaha at the Horseshoe how many days a week?
I try 3 usually.
3.
Every Monday, every Wednesday.
And what game do you play in? What's the
30.
stakes? What's your buy-ins? What are those things?
It's usually just 1, 2, it's 100 to 500. That's it. It plays kind of big, but
now it's 1, 2, 5.
Really
5 is the complete.
5 is the complete. 1, 2, 5.
Right. So the blinds are $1 and $2, and then to actually open the hand, you need to bet $5. You can't just call for 2.
Correct. Yeah, I mean it's good.
And
it's good action.
When people hear that and they think it's 1, 2 and it's a $500 max buy-in, those games get really big really fast.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, like even if there's basically almost exclusively 2 strategies, people either buy in for the minimum or the maximum, usually.
And what is your take on both?
I mean, they both have their merits. There's people that exclusively will just 100 bomb. They'll bring $1,400 and they will go with 14 $100 bullets, and they will try and spin it up and kind of gamble on their first one because you're always getting like the right price. You're always getting you're going to get 3, 4, 5-way action on your 100, and then you win one and you're up to 500, and then you can kind of. I personally
switch gears a little bit, yeah.
But I mean, I just go in for the 500 and try and win. But what was I going with this? Oh, it makes the games, like as weird as it sounds, the 100 bombers make the game really big.
Right, because they're just jamming it in. Next thing you know, it's $100 pre-flop, and you got 6-way action.
And not only that, you give like someone, you got 3 guys with 2,000. Now they have to start worrying about the 100 bomber letting it come back to me or somebody else with 2,000 that can reopen it up to 600. So
isolate and get it down to just heads up where.
So they make the game bigger for the big guys too, because now you have to look at like, man, well, I want to play this hand for 60, but this 100 bomber is just going to go all in for 100, and then the guy who made it 60 can now make it 400, and now it's like, am I all in? It's basically I don't get to play for 60, I get to play for 2,000 or not. Right.
So I never thought of it that way. Because ultimately you would think guys that buy in for the minimum are just, they don't affect the action very much. However, with PLO, they really do, because they're really looking to jam it all in on one hand pre-flop, get to see 5 cards, and
exclusively.
Then go
and
from
they're
there.
Looking for isolation too.
They're looking for that exact scenario. They're under the gun, they get it, and there's a ton of action behind them. They get 5 callers to their 100, and then one guy towards the end who's going to close the action bets the pot for 700 to get it to isolate just the 2 of them.
Right, and now they got to be one hand and 6, 7 times up.
And I know I always joke, I always tell people the worst you can be pre-flop is 60-40. What is the actual mathematical, what's the worst you could be? I guess if you were sharing cards, that would be
you can dream it up to where you're like smoked, but
for the most part, you're really
in general,
you're flipping.
Even if you're in bad shape, like
70-30.
The guy has good aces and you have an ace hand, and he has your suits dominated, like you're probably like 28 to 30%.
So even on like and again, you're talking about, because so many times people are like, well, I have aces double suited. That's great. My 5, 7, 9, 4, whatever. 40%. They're just random cards. I'm not sharing any cards with you. I've got one suit that you don't have. I got all of those 2 pairs out. If it comes out a little flop, I got a ton of straight draws, plus all my 2 pair draws, plus backdoor, diamonds or flush draws, whatever the case may be. I mean, so many things can happen, which again, even if you get it isolated in a big pot, where you've got aces double suited, which is what every player wants to have when they're looking down at their 4 cards and you see one ace is the first card you peel. Are you a peeler? Do you look at all 4 at the same time, or do you squeeze them out?
I'm like a 4 at the same time.
Oh yeah, I'm a squeezer. I always like to squeeze them out. I do it faster in Omaha because the action moves around so quickly that I don't want to slow down, but I definitely squeeze them out. I like to pinch them and see what's coming out. But I mean, I think that's something that players, you don't hear a lot of PLO stories where guys are like, I had aces, they got cracked, and I lost a 4K pot, right?
No, not really.
Normally it's like, oh, I got it all in on the turn. I had the nut straight with the flush redraw and full house outs, and then I bricked,
Right.
So now, where you are a Omaha cash game expert, would you like to call yourself an expert? Or at least
sure.
on the 2 people on this podcast right now, you are certainly the cash game expert. Where does my expertise come in, Brandon?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I was setting you up for giving me a compliment, but you're just not taking the bait.
I mean, I was going to get there. I was going to maybe give you a backhanded compliment.
The best kind of compliments.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the tournaments, you seem to have success in the tournaments.
I do, and I wish I could turn my tournament play. I have a good sense of... Maybe it's because you're playing for a much longer amount of time, and again, at some point there's no more rebuys or the ability to get back into the tournament. Although with re-entries and whatnot, it's certainly a thing that you don't have to worry about for a while. But I mean, we just recently played that World Series of Poker circuit event at Hammond, and what were there, like 90 live players, and there were like 180, 170 entries.
Yeah, it was on average like every live person had a rebuy.
On a side note, I am wiping down with Kleenex wet wipes on my soda can that I bought at the gas station. Because obviously it's Corona time, so I have to make sure that I know what I'm doing. How long do I have to wait for this Clorox? Can I drink this with the Clorox cleaning wipes like on the top? I wonder how much of that I can do before I'm doing any damage to my body.
I don't know.
All right. Well, this is drink number 1. If there's no episode 6, we know that it's 1. If there's an episode 6, we know there's at least drink 1 Diet Coke prior, and Clorox wiping solution and still be fine.
Man, see, I don't even have any of that stuff. There's nowhere wipes. I looked on eBay. I was going to buy Clorox wipes. They were like $40 for like a 3-pack.
Did you hear about those 2 brothers that drove around like Tennessee and Kentucky and kind of that area and bought up like a bunch of like cleaned out stores of, hand sanitizer and wipes and bleach and all kinds of stuff. And then obviously they all got shut off on Amazon and eBay because they're not allowing you to price gouge. And they're just stuck with like this garage full of boxes and boxes and boxes of hand sanitizer and whatnot that they cannot sell because they've been kicked off of Amazon and eBay and all those other places.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good for eBay.
Seems like maybe they should just give them away, but we'll see what happens.
Right, they should give them away, but
But back to the PLO no limit.
So PLO tournaments really haven't.
They have not caught on yet, and I feel like there is at every circuit event and at the World Series, if we ever get to have another World Series again, the 51st is certainly. We're not quite sure if it's going to happen in May or not. Right? What's your gut feeling right now? Today is April 7th, 2020. If you had a bet, is it going to happen June 1? Because it's really like the end of May, June 1st. Your vote is zero chance.
Yeah.
What about July 1st? Do you think July 1st is a possibility?
No.
August 1st?
Yeah.
You think it'll go all the way to August?
Yeah.
Huh.
Or September.
So I'm just forecasting here on your behalf. You're thinking the casinos will open, poker rooms will open shortly after that. You think the progression is going to be the casinos open back up, then the poker rooms open up a couple weeks later after that because you're in much more closer quarters. Things are that curve is on that very flat side. And then you think after that, then there'll be the opportunity to have big poker tournaments again.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much exactly my forecast.
Nice. I don't know what I want to guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think that casinos will be open May 1st.
Yeah.
And I think that poker will be back alive in June. But like,
this
there's
summer.
just so many travel restrictions, and
So you're thinking those Heartland Poker Tours, the mid stakes poker tours, the MSPTs, the HPTs, the WSOP, the WPT, they'll be taking a longer break for the fact that they play in much larger scale events, whereas like charity poker, local tournaments will be, they're normally 40, 50, 60 people at a time. It's not going to be as big.
correct. I think that kind of stuff,
Or it won't have as much effect.
I mean, the WSOP, you got to remember, is just so massive.
Yeah.
I mean, there's thousands of people in one room. There's
sharing bathrooms, sharing cards, sharing chips.
It's just like, it's kind of a recipe for exactly what the government doesn't want us to do right now.
I do have a small, I know we've kind of totally sidetracked this No Limit Hold'em versus Pot Limit Omaha discussion, but I am a firm believer, not a firm believer. I have a theory, a conspiracy theory, that poker players are less likely to get this type of virus because of the fact that we're already so susceptible to all of these different bacterias on cards and chips and in casinos in general, that poker players are like the highly evolved human beings when it comes to pandemics because of the fact that we've been subjected to all of these germs for so long.
So I honestly thought that too, but then like, can't you say the same thing about doctors, and they're still getting it?
True. I think maybe
But
less
they're being,
doctors
like,
considering how many, but that's a rabbit hole we don't want to go down.
Well, they're being like directly exposed 100
Yeah.
times a day, whereas like, yeah. But I agree. I can agree with that. That we have to build some sort of like super immunity from like
Right.
touching everything for months.
Because you got to imagine every single time you go to a poker room, at least one person in there has the flu.
Right.
Right? Like I can't imagine the probability of that being zero. It's got to be zero.
Right.
But anyways, back to No Limit Hold'em, Pot Limit Omaha. That's our Corona update for April 7th. Oh, it's my nephew's birthday tomorrow. Charlie. Happy birthday, Charlie, if you listen to the podcast. He's going to be 6. Yeah, he's probably not listening to the podcast. Back to Pot Limit Omaha tournaments. I feel like if No Limit Hold'em cash games are probably less solved than tournaments. Tournaments are very much, I feel like you can get players right into their range, and then you can make an informed decision going, okay, if I can put them on this range and I can represent what I have, I know kind of what I'm getting involved in, and it makes for the good players to be able to last longer in tournaments. Does that make sense?
That's probably one of the most
thoughtful and insightful things I've ever said.
Yes.
Boom, hashtag it. If tournaments and No Limit are like that, cash games might be a little bit more of the Wild West because there's, people can rebuy and they can do some different things. I mean, there's
blinds don't go up.
Right? And they can make some moves and you can it's a little bit more difficult to put a No Limit player on a hand or a range. We don't use the term hand anymore. Put them on a range in a cash game because they can do some different stuff, right? Whereas if we now take that over to the Pot Limit Omaha side, cash games again, tournament PLO players, they don't always make a change from their cash game play to their tournament play because like when you play No Limit tournament, you have like a No Limit tournament style and then you have like your cash game style, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas I feel like PLO players, they're so used to just playing cash games and that they don't really play tournaments that correlation is a little different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because
they're just playing PLO.
They're just playing PLO. Whereas most poker players, you start playing tournaments. You play tournaments first, and then you start playing cash games. I'm sure there are some people that start playing cash games and then start picking up tournaments. But I would say, wouldn't you agree that most players, that's just what you do? You play small stakes, little tournaments, and then you progress into playing bigger cash games because you realize I can play for 2 hours and win more money per hour than I am playing in a tournament where I wasted 8 hours of my day, bubbled, and got nothing.
Correct.
But PLO, because the tournaments are so few and far between, I mean, even at the World Series in Las Vegas in the summer, how many PLO tournaments are there?
Like 6.
Tops, right? And that includes like a 10K
100.
PLO. I'm actually going to look it up here in a second.
There's a 25K PLO, there's a 10K PLO, there's a 10K 6Max PLO, there's a 3K and a 1500, and then there's the mini like 555 PLO.
Oh,
There's maybe about
that's relatively new. All games.
last
Check
year.
this out. Omaha. Omaha. Why is that not in there? How do I filter that? WSOP, you guys are not doing so hot on your... Go. I don't know how to actually change it. Anyways, and there, I think you're even including some high-low events and some things like that. Horse has got it in there. Jesus, Dealer's Choice. There's a great game to play. Pot Limit Omaha 8-handed. Anyways, so there's just less opportunities for people to... Yeah, there's just less opportunities. And then if you even take it, that's the pinnacle of tournament poker is the WSOP. Even if you take that on a smaller scale, like a circuit event, how many PLO tournaments were there at the circuit event just this past, in January?
I mean, you get one, and then there's some spots that don't even have any.
Correct. So the opportunity and the play is so different that I feel like tournament poker, tournament PLO, there's a lot of room to wiggle around there. And if you just play smart, you play tight and aggressive, you can really do well in those tournaments.
Hold on, I need to take notes. Tight, smart, and aggressive.
It was funny when I was playing in the at the final table. I went to the final table of that circuit event as the chip leader, which was pretty cool. That is a first for me. I have never been the chip leader in a tournament, especially at the final table. So that was super cool because the Poker News does like a little blurb about the final table and each player and where they're at. And I actually get more because I'm the chip leader. So I'm like at the top of that first final table article, which was pretty awesome. But
right.
I will say this, you were pretty awesome in sending me some tips on like texting me like on breaks, like here, this is what you need to be doing. You need to be opening this, you need to be 3-betting more, and you need to be c-betting and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I was like, oh man, slow down. I got to write this stuff down. And I did all of those things and they did not work out at all because every time I would I would 3-bet pre-flop or raise pre-flop, and then I would continuation bet on the flop no matter what hit out there. And I always got re-raised coming back at me. And I'm like, damn it, I really can't do anything because I have nothing. I whiffed this pot or this flop completely.
Yep. I mean, there's just sometimes you're stuck, but I mean, you stuck with it. And
yeah, up and down.
Mean,
and I'd get second.
Know. Did you ever like cooler anybody or like you just held in big spots? And
I won as in all tournaments. I won, some good races. I got it in some key spots. I think the one time I might have gotten it in a little, like I had kings double suited and I had like queen, jack, 10-8. So, I mean, still middle cards, one suit. My one suit was live, which was great. He had kings and none of my other cards. He had like king 5-6 or something, but obviously double suited, which was what he was really more going towards. And I think I just flopped the hearts. Like I had, queen 10 hearts, just flop hearts. He doesn't have any hearts. I win. Yeah. So, I mean, that was the one time I would say that maybe I got it in worse. Right, but even at that point, what am I, 60-40?
Right, yeah.
And I might even not even be that bad. It might even be more like 55-45. So,
right.
But I think all the other times I got it in on the flip side of it where it was close, I was always the slight edge favorite. So I did feel like I played pretty good. And I was able to get away from some spots where I had raised pre-flop, bet the flop, bet the turn, and then get re-raised on a big hand. And I'm like, God, I just don't feel like I can win here,
Yep.
Made some big laydowns, and right or wrong I guess it doesn't matter. The end result justifies the means, but
for sure.
So No Limit Hold'em versus Pot Limit Omaha. Neither one of us will really play No Limit at this point, right?
No, like I'm only going to play a big limit tournament, and then like I look at it, and then as soon as I'm like, oh, this is an awesome main event. The winner's going to get $250K. Like, let's play it. It's $1,600. And then I get in it, and I'm just like, dude, I don't even want to do this.
This is awful. Yeah.
Like, the dream of running deep in those No Limit Hold'ems is like a cool dream. But, like, it's just like, it's so unrealistic. I'm looking around my table, and there's like, these guys got 40 rings, and they're playing, two tournaments a day for the entire year. And it's not even to say that, like, I don't think that, like, everybody can play good and run good and, beat these guys. Not that they're intimidating. It's just like, I don't know if I have like the mental game of it or whatever, but it just seems like whenever I decide I'm going to play a big tournament, even when I'm chipping up and have a lot of chips, I'm just like, I don't even know what I'm doing here.
Right. It's just I think that's one thing that I think the biggest thing that happens when players start to transition over to PLO, and if you don't listen to anything in this part of this or this episode of the podcast, I think this is the most important thing to remember, is that once you start making the move to Pot Limit Omaha, win or lose, tournament or cash game, doesn't matter. The problem is there's so much more going on and so much more action and so many different things that you get to think about and do that once you start playing that, even if you play poorly and lose all your money, when you go back to Hold'em, it's impossible to stay focused and be. I'm trying to think of a good analogy here. It's just boring.
Yeah,
it's hard to go back. Did you drop your phone, or what'd you do?
No, I didn't. I was putting my pinky over my speaker.
Right, which makes for bad audio medium.
Well, it's all right. It was only a couple seconds.
It would be like having a threesomes all the time in college and then go back to just one.
Get married, or
I didn't want to say that because I love being married, but
right.
Yeah,
it's
threesomes all the time sound pretty good too, though. So that's
I always say
tough debate.
Compared to drugs, like you smoke weed all day and it's cool, but then you graduate to a bigger drug, you ain't going back.
It's hard to go backwards. Yeah, nobody goes back.
Nobody goes backwards, and it's kind of the same thing. It's just like it's not that it's like a sickness, but it's just like it's a way of poker that's just so much different and more exhilarating, and just like you said, just so much more going on.
There's just a lot more stuff to do. I have never, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. When you were talking about the No Limit Hold'em tournaments, because I'm in the same boat as you are, like I would love to play in like a $1,600 or one of these like mid-states poker tour stuff where you're playing at Potawatomi and it's a $1,600 buy, and first place is like $140K. Like that gets my juices flowing. But when I'm in the tournament and I'm playing, I am bored out of my mind. I'm constantly on my phone. I'm looking for things to do, trying to read an article or play a game or listen to music. When I played in that PLO tournament, you have so much going around and there's so much things that are happening. I didn't use my phone once. Like I brought like an extra battery. I brought my iPad in case my phone died. So I always had, because I'm always afraid I'm going to be stuck at the casino with nothing to do other than dump all my money at blackjack.
Lose your money.
Right. Yeah, I always got to have something else to do. But I think that's the difference. Once you start playing PLO, it's far easier to pay attention to the game, because even when you're not in the hand, it's still fun to watch and be a spectator, whereas I have zero desire to want to be a spectator at any No Limit Hold'em, cash game, or tournament. I find when I'm not in the hand, I fold. I'm back on my phone doing whatever I was doing. I don't care about, unless it's a super big hand, which is maybe once an hour. And that even might be a stretch. I was going to say 2 or 3 times a session where I'm like, whoa, what's going on over here? What happened? And then it's like,
right.
you want to feel like you're part of the action by watching. Whereas PLO, there's so much stuff going on. It's great.
It's a great game.
It's a great game of Pot Limit Omaha, 4-card Hold'em. It's fantastic. All right. Well, I think that does it for the No Limit Hold'em versus Pot Limit Omaha episode. Although both of us are huge PLO fans and not really into Hold'em.
And I used to be into Hold'em. I used to play exclusively Hold'em.
Yeah.
But once it changes you, it changes you. And
once you cross over, there's no going back.
It's tough to go back.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening to episode 5 of the Overlay Poker podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, because we absolutely have 0. I think the first 2 followers will be me and Brandon.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to do that right now.
So, yeah, please do that now.
So, again, it's at the overlay _ pod.
Yep. And if you check out the website, you can see it. There's links all over it. So, wherever you found us, thanks for watching. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and a million other ones that you can get, and they're always free. So thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time. Brandon, do you have anything to close out?
I don't have.
You were supposed to come up with like a
tagline.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 6.
No, this is episode 5. So you even gave.
So in episode 6, I'll have one.
I got you. Episode 6 was a pretty good Star Wars. Have you still never watched Star Wars?
I've never seen any Star Wars.
All right, we've completely derailed this podcast. We will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Farewell.
Bye.